على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما تعلمنا وزدنا بفضلك علما وتعليما إنك على كل شيء قدير. Okay, so um, inshallah, I'll share a link. I did during Ramadan we did that class on the halal and haram in the Quran. So there's a whole thing on marriage and divorce and gender interaction, all these kind of things. We did a kind of a 2 hour class on it. I'll share that inshallah ta'ala. You can kind of skip through it and choose things as you see fit that you want to kind of look into. But here, just that we finished here, we're looking at 228, I believe. So last month I mentions divorced women must wait 3 months, 3 monthly cycles before they can remarry. So the first thing here is, um, uh, uh, the first thing is it says divorced women. It doesn't say divorced men, right? Because in principle you can't divorce your husband. That's not a thing, right? So again, we remind ourselves of patriarchy. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put the strength and the core of Islamic society in men. Uh, Jum'ah and the Jum'ah and Jama'ah, meaning the Friday prayer and the group prayer, this is essentially done by men. It's not that women can't go, but it is essentially done by men because they are the backbone of society. That is the point. They are the people, الرجال قوامون على النساء, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in the Quran later on. The men are the guardians of women. So here, we all agree that by default, scholars agree by default, a man is divorcing his wife, not a wife divorcing her husband. That's not a thing. They disagree on marriage, right? So generally speaking, the majority vote, so to speak, is that المرأة لا تنكح ولا تنكح, right? ولا تنكح عفوا, is a woman does not get married by herself, nor does she marry herself off. So a woman is not a guardian, nor does she marry herself off, right? So that means technically speaking, she's married off and she's divorced off, right? So when it comes to marriage, again, there's a debate and variables in terms of permission, etc. And the Hanafi position, which is the position of the most Islamic laws in the world, so that they use to follow the Hanafi fiqh, is that a woman cannot be married against her will ever, under no circumstances. Um, but she could be divorced against herself, against her will, right? So this is very important to understand. I'm not trying to speak in a misogynist way or anything way, but there's a key thing we always have to remind ourselves is, where are our heads? Where is the Quran? Right? We see this again and again and again, right? We, meaning the average religious Muslim, the average Muslim who in principle identifies with the Quran, in principle wants to follow the Quran, but actually where our heads are is not actually where the Quran is, right? There's a huge gap. So we, meaning the average Western, liberal Western practicing Muslim, right? Even though we're practicing Muslims, we're still liberal Westerners, meaning we believe in ultimate freedom and autonomy. Nobody can ever tell you what to do, um, because, you know, you're free. That's a fundamental thing, right? Fundamental concept. You can't be forced to do things. And so, whereas the default, the Prophet ﷺ, he said about marriage, he said marriage is a form of riq, is a form of servitude. And so he said, so be very, very careful who you marry your women off to. So there is an element, right? We in the Christian point of view and Islamic point of view, you can look at it as loyalty and as commitment. There is a commitment aspect to it, but there's also an aspect of marriage that is actually, by default, you don't have a choice. So that so that's it's a huge thing for a woman, for example, when she's getting married, is you are losing freedom. That's a huge thing, right? Like you're losing freedom. So you're obviously getting something, but you're losing a freedom. Do you want to do that or not? Because in principle, you can't just walk out of this relationship. Now, there are creative ways you can do that, and this is something that I promote. Some of you might follow the Q&A that we've done. We shared a whole answer on this, I don't know, maybe 3 weeks ago or something like that, or maybe more, about giving women more autonomy. There are tricks you can do that. For example, you could simply give her the right to divorce herself, right? So she's 35, 40. She's not very comfortable with the whole idea of giving up her freedom. She doesn't want to be in a relationship that she couldn't step out of if she felt she didn't want to be part of it, right? Anymore, for emotional reasons, for example. Um, and maybe, for example, she didn't actually even want to live with a man for some time. She's like, I'll see him, but I don't want to live with him. Like, that's strange. Like, I have my own house, it's half paid off. I have my own career. I can't just walk into this relationship. It's very complex. So there are creative things you can do. So by default, she has a right to be housed and fed, and he has a right for her to be home. But they don't have to do that, do they? So she can say, it's okay, you don't need to pay my rent. Or you can just, for example, pay me a stipend instead of paying the rent, right? And we can just agree that I'm not going to come and stay with you, right? Because we don't have to, and we can just play it by ear. That's fine. They can both mutually agree on that. It's not a problem. And also, immediately after the contract, right, he can say, for example, they spoke to the imam over the last 6 months and she was very hesitant about marriage, and maybe he was too, right, for various reasons. And, they said, for example, what we're going to do is going to do the contract, which takes 3 seconds. And then thereafter, he will say, in front of everybody, that he gives his wife the right to divorce herself whenever she wishes. So now she walks out, and she's in a situation where she could divorce herself, right? Now, Abdullah ibn Abbas, he spoke about this. He said, yeah, it counts, but you've put the wrong thing in the wrong hands. That's what he said, right? And perhaps if he was here in the West, he might say something else. Allahu a'lam, right? So the default is that men are in charge of this relationship. That's the default. A woman cannot divorce herself. That's the default. Nor can she divorce her husband, right? And that's for the benefit of everybody, right? However, again, there are creative things that you can use, which temporarily or in very particular situations do serve certain goals. Am I making sense? Aman, Ilsa, Noor, right? So the default is a woman is divorced and a man is not divorced. That's the point, right? You can't get divorced by your wife. That doesn't make any sense. So she must wait 3 monthly cycles before they can remarry. So that's not it's not a very good translation. Because remarry would give the sense that they can remarry to each other. Like that's what I would assume, right? Before she can marry again. But they are remarried. That means they got married again to each other. That's not true, right? Um, so how does it work? It, who is not familiar with this? I'm not quite sure how much detail I have to mention. Is everyone familiar with the whole process? Aman, Noor, Sophia. We have so Noor, it's all clear to you, right? We covered it in Ramadan. Great. Anybody else? So anyway, this translation, I just take exception to this translation. It doesn't really make sense. 100%, right? So again, their husbands reserve the right to take them back. We spoke about this as well. Um, okay. So key concept, like again, people come along and say, no, no, men and women are equal in Islam. It's. I mean, if you want to, it's so men and women are equal in Islam in that you are not born with a more likelihood of getting close to Allah. That's what it means. But people are not born equal. So somebody who's born to a wealthy family does not have the same rights as somebody who's born to a poor family. So, right? So they're not equal, are they? In the sense that my father is a multi-trillionaire and your father is in debt. So that means what am I going to inherit? What are you going to inherit? What can I have access to? What can you have access to? It's not the same. So we're not actually equal in that sense, right? Okay, we have rights similar to those of men. Okay, so it says divorce may be retracted twice. We did that. Then the husband must retain his wife with honor. So that's a key thing that's lost today, or separate from her with grace. It is not lawful for the husbands to take anything of the dowry back given to their wives, unless the couple fears not being able to keep within limits. This is called khula. So she says, here you go. You paid me X amount for the mahar. Just please take it back and just divorce me. So it says it's not lawful to do that. It's haram for him to take him back unless she says, I'm giving you this money back on the proviso that you divorce me. This is called a khula. It's not called talaq. Khula is irrevocable because he can't take her back, and he gets the money. And they debate, does it have to only be the mahar or could it be something else? Let's say she says, I'll give you $1 million to divorce me, or I'll give you $10 to divorce me. Is it actually pinned to the mahar or not? It's an issue of debate among the ulama. So if you fear that they will not be able to keep within the limits of Allah, right, then there is no blame if the wife compensates the husband to obtain divorce, right? So notice here, what do we do today is religious people just don't get divorced because it's shameful, and then they are not within the limits of Allah, right? Rights are not being given, adab is not being kept, right? So as we mentioned before, work on your marriage, find out what's wrong with you, number one, and then try and change that internally and work on the marriage, and then work on the marriage again, and then work on the marriage again, and then move on, right? So many people, they'd be like, oh, embarrassed, like, oh, I failed if I got a divorce. It's embarrassing. I don't want people to see me, right? And that's wrong, right? وَلَا تَخْشَوُا النَّاسَ وَخْشَوْنِي, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, don't dread people, dread me. So you're not able to not be offensive in your tone. You're not able to give that person their rights, right? Okay, so then are things so it's like this is it's just not possible. Try again. Try again. Try again. It failed. Okay, alhamdulillah, Rabbil Alamin, moved on. Not a problem. So it shouldn't be a flake. I mean, you didn't even try. You didn't even, you didn't even look. There was no introspection about yourself. What's wrong with you? Or your bad communication skills, your selfishness, your this, your this, your this. The fact that you sacrificed the marriage for everything else in your life. And you also didn't try. You didn't go to therapy. You didn't go to marriage counseling. You didn't ask anybody. You just tried to Google it, and you didn't really care, right? That's not acceptable, right? That's not being reasonable. But at the same time, it's possible that there's two righteous people that just don't get along. That's totally fine. Like they realize actually they married the wrong person. It's totally fine. And you didn't marry the wrong person because you got married for the sake of Allah, and whatever financial, emotional time sacrifices that you did for the sake of Allah, right? So he doesn't say, oh my God, I paid this for you. She said, I did this for you. No, no, you don't do anything for your wife or anything for your husband. You do it for Allah. And so, alhamdulillah, Rabbil Alameen, nothing was lost. You did it for the sake of Allah. And the sacrifices you did were for the sake of Allah. The children you bore were for the sake of Allah. The sacrifices you made, etc., for the sake of Allah. Alhamdulillah, Rabbil Alameen. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants you to move on. Not a problem. As opposed to, you didn't try and fix things because you're immature, or lazy, or proud, or whatever it is. Or the other side is, oh my God, my life is over. I put all of these things into this woman, all of these things into this man, and look where I am right now. And I've lost everything. And that's wrong. And who wronged you in reality? You did yourself. If you got married for other than the sake of Allah, nobody did that other than you. If you woke up in the middle of the night 20 times for the baby and you did it for other than Allah, that's on you. That's on anybody else. Nobody can make you do things for other than Allah. It's not possible. Nobody can change your niyyah, change your motives. They might change what you do. Oh, because of my wife, I left that job. Because of my husband, I left this, right? They might change what you do, but they can't change why you do things, right? So that's a very, very important thing. Very, very important thing, right? So this person who is now 45, 50, 60, and they just got a divorce and they're like, everything's fallen apart in their life. I did this, I did this, I did this, I did this, and look where I am now. Brother, sister, your life started at puberty, and you had a Lord, and you knew you have to dedicate yourself to Him. You made lots of decisions for other than Allah, and you invested in other than Allah, and now you found yourself in your 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, divorced, and in a financial situation or a family situation or whatever it is, that's a problem. It's only a problem because of your own decisions and your own reactions. It's only because you've been continually wasting your life investing in other than Allah. You're sitting here right now, and the reason why you're sitting here is for other than Allah. It's the same thing. Around me, come to my office right now, surrounded by books, hadith, fiqh, this. All of it is dunya if you don't pick up the book for the sake of Allah. If I'm sitting here right now and I'm not here for the sake of Allah, then what's the point? So people think, oh, they got a divorce, the life was over. Their child died, life was over. This happened, the life was over. Your life is over when you decide to do things for other than Allah. But your life, you are actually alive. You're alive when you do things for the sake of Allah. Right? How do I know that? The Prophet ﷺ told us. He said, the house in which Allah is remembered and the house in which Allah is not remembered is like the living and the dead. Right? So why did you, he left his job for 6 months for the sake of his wife. He sold the house, which he could have sold for much more for the sake of his wife. He did this, and then she walked out on him. And he's like, oh my God, I did all of this for her, and this is what she did. That's because you yourself were investing in the wrong thing. Don't invest in your wife. Don't invest in your husband. Don't invest in your kids. Don't invest in the environment. Don't invest in the future. Don't invest in the orphans. Invest in Allah. Do things for the sake of Allah. Let Allah be your motive. The reason why you did this for your wife was Allah. The reason why you did this for your husband was Allah. The reason why you did this, whatever. The environment is going to be destroyed. Right? It's all going to go. So don't invest in that. Your kids are all going to die one day. Right? Everything's going to fall apart at one point. But not your niyyah, not your good deeds. And your good deeds are your niyyah. So key thing. Right? Key thing for married people and divorcees. Oh, I was divorced and it all fell apart. What does it mean to put myself together again is to realize I'm never, ever going to invest in anything other than Allah. So these people might be bitter because they're like, I hate everybody. But in reality, they should be bitter with themselves. They should be kicking themselves saying, why did I live my life like that? The person I chose to marry for the sake of my nafs, not for the sake of Allah. How I did the marriage? Because my family said that. How I did this? Because he said that, because she said that. Why I did this? Because he said that, because she said that. Don't talk to people, talk to Allah. Don't deal with people, deal with Allah. And life will be easy, and none of your investment will be lost. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the beginning, they're facing the Jerusalem, right? They're facing Jerusalem in prayer, and then they face the Qibla, and they're shocked. What's going to happen? Will our previous prayers count? وَمَا كَانَ اللَّهُ لِيُضِيعَ إِيمَانَكُمْ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would never squander your iman. So you made sacrifices for that person for the sake of Allah. It's all with Allah. Don't worry about it. Right? So we can say, to paraphrase it, وَلِلَّهِ الْمَثَلُ الْأَعْلَى, marry Allah, don't marry him or her. Like all of that, right? Don't wake up for your child. Wake up for Allah. Because that child will die. That child may leave Islam. That child may be rude to you. You don't do things for this. I'm not saying be callous. I'm saying love other people through your love of Allah. Be compassionate towards other people through your love of Allah. Do sacrifice to other people through your sacrifice for Allah. And then it's all with Allah. And it's not going to be lost. Otherwise, it's all going to be lost. It's all going to be lost. Am I making sense, inshallah? Good question. So that's something you have to work on, right? How do you know? So what is your motive? So work your motive. So if your motive, for example, this man, for example, he bought his wife some flowers. Okay? Why did a man buy his wife some flowers? To make her happy. Okay? To make her happy. She wasn't happy. She threw the flowers on the floor and stepped on them and said, what kind of a joke is this? You think you can bring me flowers and make up for what you said yesterday? And so now he did something for a reason. and the goal was not achieved, so then he's sad because, oh, the goal was not achieved. As opposed to, he left the house. He's like, I have no idea how to correct what happened yesterday. Ya Allah, please help me. The angels came to him and said, well, try a dumb trick and try and get her flowers. He goes and buys flowers. To buy flowers, he had to go off the way. And the flowers were expensive because whatever way he bought it. So he's like, man, this is expensive. This is crazy. So then he comes home and he's like, Ya Allah, I'm doing this for your sake. Why am I correcting this? Because you said we should be nice to people. And Ya Allah, I'm trying to have my children, when they're older, see this is how mommy and daddy solve things. They try to solve things. And then I want my kids to grow up as righteous believers and their kids and their kids and their. So his mind is not even in the house. His mind is with Allah, his mind. And so her reaction, whether she reacts in this way or reacts is totally different. He's with Allah already. It doesn't matter what happens and doesn't what happen. Right? As opposed to, oh my God, I did this, right? He spent an Eid gift. She, for example, she left her work. She's like, okay, you have a conversation. She's like, I'm gonna leave my work for 6 months, fine, because we need to work on this for the kids and da 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 da. And so she's doing it, investing in the relationship. And then he didn't appreciate it. So she's out of her head, like, oh my God, you are so inconsiderate and so selfish. Like I left my work, lost money, and lost part of my career for you just so that we can do this, and this is how you treat me. So now she feels like, oh my God, this is terrible. As opposed to if you did it for the sake of Allah, you haven't lost anything, right? What did you lose? Nothing. Because you haven't lost anything. So when you feel down, when the results are not there, you know that you were chasing the wrong results. You did the exam in order to get a grade. Then that's a pointless waste of time. You just wasted your life. You did the exam for the sake of Allah. It doesn't matter what the grades are, right? And just, a practical thing. I remember when my high school grades came out. You know what I did? When my high school grades came out, I didn't even check them. So it's like we had like 3 months of exams. 3 months of exams. It's actually not high school in England. It's different, right? So with GCSEs, but it's basically the last 4 or 5 years of your school, right? Which is grade 7 to grade 10. And it's like that's quite a big thing. But I did not open the letter when the envelope came. I didn't open it to check my grades because it doesn't matter what my grades are. So if you did it for the grades, you're wondering what the grades are. If you did it for Allah, it doesn't matter what the grades are. Does that make sense? Like that's irrelevant. That's not. So if, for example, you're applying for college, like I actually found out my grades. I remember I found out my grades when I applied for college because they had them. It wasn't college. It's what we call sixth form in England, right? Because like if your nafs is involved when it's like, what is it? What is it? Right? How much money did you get? What's this? What's that? I don't really care how much money I got. I'm interested. If I don't care about it, then why do if I don't care about it, then why do I want to know about it? Unless there are obviously practical reasons, right? There's something else. But the point is the fact that your heart isn't changing, right? I remember one of the first stories of this that ever hit me, and it shocked, it was, I'm pretty sure it's in Ibn Arabi's Sufi Saints of Andalusia, right? I'm pretty sure it's there, Allahu Alam. Could be somewhere else. Whereas a man, he invested, right? He had a ship loaded with goods, right? A ship loaded with goods and sent to another country. So then the man gets news that the whole ship has sunk. So he says, Alhamdulillah, no change in him whatsoever, right? Millions and millions of dollars gone, right? A month later, 2 months later, news, it wasn't your ship, it's somebody else's ship. Your ship has actually arrived. Alhamdulillah. Same response. Okay, why hasn't he changed? Because his heart was not tied to the results. His heart was tied to Allah. If you invested for the sake of Allah, and you sent a ship with goods to make money for the sake of Allah, then it's irrelevant whether or not you make money. Nothing is changed, right? And this is a really important thing, particularly when it comes to marriage. What's her name? Dalia Mujahid, right? She has that book, Reclaiming Your Heart. That's what I'm talking about. Do not give your heart to your husband. Don't give your heart to your wife. Give your heart to Allah. So it doesn't mean being callous, like, yeah, I don't really care about you. right? He tells her, yeah, I'm only, actually, I didn't actually buy the flowers for you. I bought them for Allah. That's not a very nice thing to say, is it? Right? He didn't say that. I don't actually love you. I just love you as an accident of my relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Like you could be anybody, right? That's not a thing that you tell your wife, is it? Or your husband. That's not a thing that you say, right? Like I wanted to marry any religious person. It just happened to be you. Like you just happened to turn up. That's not something that you say, right? And in reality, it's more nuanced than that. In reality, every person's relationship is private, is more nuanced than that. But the point is, when it's tied to them as themselves, then when they die or where they go off or where they can hurt you. Otherwise, they can't hurt you. They can't hurt you. Nobody can. You can't. You cannot be heartbroken because you're with them, right? So you love them as a religious person. As they become more religious, you love them. You love the religious things about them, right? You might get angry with them because of their selling themselves short. Like, why did you miss a prayer, bro? Or why did you at work, for example? So here's a conversation, right? For example, Husna. Okay, she finds out that her husband shook hands with this attractive lady at work. So if you're looking at your husband as a husband, you're like there's jealousy, normal jealousy, and spite, like subhanAllah, like you did something haram like that, shaking hands with a woman, and then you chose to do it just because she was attractive, like subhanAllah, you're so low. But it's more hate, more hurt than disdain, right? So you're low. I hate you. Um, I don't want to be around you. Um, I just hope something bad happens to you because there's a lot of anger towards you. And like, what is this? Right? And then why did I even get into this thing? And then all the sacrifice she's doing, like, why did I even do this? Why did I do this? Why did I do this for this guy? Right? As opposed to he does the same thing. He does something he shouldn't have done at work. And you're sad for him because he's a brother in Islam. And you're upset because bro, like this is not the direction we're going in, you know? This isn't what we were working towards. We're working towards Allah and doing things for the sake of Allah. And this is haram. You can't do that, right? And so, yeah, there might be some level of unavoidable level of jealousy, like, who is she? What's her name? That kind of thing. That's something unavoidable, but that's not the predominant relationship. As opposed to when it's me and you, then it's like, it's just it's like your heart is just there, and the other person just has a knife and can just stab you in any direction because it's just like you're totally invested in them. So don't be invested in a person. Be invested in a person as an investment in Allah. Does that make sense? So let's say, for example, then your husband or wife leaves Islam. You wouldn't. It's like, yeah, Allah doesn't love you and I don't love you. I'm sorry, unless you become Muslim again. So yeah, it's sad, but like I'm not attached to you. I'm attached to and so there was a diagram. I'll show you this diagram. It's a nice diagram. Where was it? Somebody did this on Instagram once. I don't follow. I'm not on Instagram, but I'm none of these things are shared with me. Where is this? Where is the? I think I have to pause this. Yeah, gotta pause this. There we go. But they did a diagram like this. Whereas this nice diagram? This is a really good diagram. So you put Allah here. You put husband here. Wife here. So they're trying to work in this direction. So whoever's somebody's on the writing on the board, it can be seen by everybody. So please don't do that. Okay. So they're trying to get close to each other like this. I don't move this thing. They're trying to get close to each other like this. That's not how you get close to your husband or wife. Which direction should they actually go in? Up, right? So he's doing sacrifices for her, she's doing sacrifices for him, and then it's like, it's not going anywhere. Like I don't, it's like it doesn't matter. Like the more I try and fix this thing, the more it doesn't go anywhere. You're walking in the wrong direction. You're walking in the wrong direction, right? So so now that it's all the internal mechanism, the decisions that you make. Why do you make these decisions, right? His work for this was for the dunya, was not for Allah. Uh, so I'm not saying you change anything. Half the time, don't even change anything. Like, it's not like he's going to leave his work or leave his wife. It's like why you married her was a wrong reason, and why she married him was a wrong reason. And so I'm not saying, hey, have a divorce and start again. I'm not saying that. It's like kickstart your marriage. Like, actually, why am I doing things? I'm not going to do that anymore. And you might stop certain things. Like, yeah, I'm not going to do that. I'm not doing that job anymore. I'm not whatever it is that he was doing or she was doing before, right? And so don't do those things. Do it for the sake of Allah, right? And obviously, it's going to be the most apparent case when there's haram in the relationship, right? Haram things are happening, whatever it is. Like, he made a fuss. Oh, you never go to any of the social things. You have to turn up at this wedding and you have to dress up because it looks weird when you come up wearing a niqab or whatever it is that you do, whatever. It's like, you're such a weirdo. So she's like, okay, for the sake of my husband, I'm going to do this, do this, that. So now she's sacrificed a bit of her deen for her husband in order to kind of like please him because, you should please your husband and da 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 da. And that was stupid, right? You don't please your husband by doing the haram. That doesn't please Allah. You didn't get yourself closer to Allah. And so you're not actually getting closer to your husband anyway. So what was the point, right? She was always complaining, well, everybody else has a house. We don't have a house. You're not doing this. And then he's like, okay, let's do the riba loan. Right. And now she feels a bit more comfortable. Now we have a house. So he tried to get closer to her by sacrificing his deen. It's not going to work. It's not actually going to work. Whereas you get closer to each other through the sake through Allah. That's how it works. Right? That's how it works. Anyhow, we're going way off topic, but it makes sense, inshallah. Um, so these are the limits set by Allah. Do not transgress them. And whoever transgresses the limits of Allah, they are true transgressors. So again, just to repeat, divorce is not the end of the world if it's done for the sake of Allah. Anything, marriage that's not done for the sake of Allah, continuing in a marriage, and not fixing a marriage, whatever you do for other than Allah, you've already lost. You've already lost. The investment is already squandered, right? You put $1 million in Bitcoin and you just lost it all immediately, right? So there's a pointless thing to do, right? Okay, so that's why you should be very, very careful. How did you meet your wife? Well, I'm not going to explain because it's not halal. There we go. So things started for other than Allah. So what was the point? So obviously it's off to begin with, unless you change. You both decide to change the direction. Right? So if a husband divorces his wife 3 times, then it's not lawful for him to remarry her until she has married another man and then divorce. So marriage here meaning marriage and consummation, right? Marriage and consummation. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling her, move on, sister. Don't just sit here and pine and say, oh, how can we repair things? It's unrepairable. It's fine. Move on. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give you rizq in other ways. Don't worry about it. Then it is permissible for them to reunite. So the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us this tells us that marriage is there's so much more marriage mobility in Islam than we normally experience in conservative Muslim societies. So you see a woman who's been married twice, totally fine. People who've been divorced, totally fine. People who've been divorced and remarried, totally fine. So here's these kids in this house. 2 of them are from when they were married. One of them is when she was married to somebody else, and then the other one is from when they got remarried. Totally fine. Not shameful, not weird, not anything. Right? So we live in a kind of Dickensian world where there's all this thing about shame and this is unacceptable and this is unacceptable. to heck with all of that. Like we're not Dickens, right? We're not whatever it is that kind of world, or it doesn't matter what people think, what people don't think. Go about the deen. And it's much easier for us to apply that in the West because there are no social norms, right? Like it's not a problem. So sometimes it's kind of easier to apply in the West. Okay. These are the limits set by Allah, which He makes clear for people of knowledge. When you divorce women and they have almost reached the end of the waiting period, then either retain them honorably in a nice way or let go of them honorably, right? If you can't talk to her without sparks flying, have somebody else talk to her. If you can't maintain adab, don't do it, right? Um, Khair. But do not retain them only to harm them or to take advantage of them, right? It's beneficial that you're still married so this achieves certain goals, so just keep it like that. It would be embarrassing if you stayed married. That's wrong. You are wronging somebody, just forget it. If you're not able to be fair to somebody, not able to be kind to somebody, you're continually having arguments. Arguments are normal. Nobody's perfect. But it's a continually, extremely harsh swearing, cussing, violence, just going nowhere continually, and you never goes anywhere, and you've tried 3, 4 times to fix it. Okay, obviously can't do that, right? And then, needless to say, the fact that you actually end up swearing or you end up showing disrespect to somebody means that who has a problem? Is the problem your wife or your husband or the marriage or you? Like I'm a religious person, but when it happen when my wife says certain things, phew, everything goes out the window. Where's the problem? Is it my marriage? Is it my wife? Or is it me? It's you. So as Sayyidina Umar said, all right, Rahimallahu imra'an ahda ilayya uyubi. May Allah show mercy to that person who gives me on a plate my own faults. He says, here you go, right? So she is a bot. She is an app. She's not a wife. He is an app. He is not a husband. This app is for you to test your akhlaq. Okay? You keep raising your voice with your husband. Is that adab? No, sister, it is not. It's not adab. Yeah, but he did this. But he just drives me crazy. That's true, sister, but he doesn't exist. He's just an app. You get a score and it's like 1 out of 10. It says, sister, you got 1 out of 10. That's not him, that's you. But you're gonna see me Allah and that's it. You were callous. She was crying. You didn't care. You say things that hurt her to the core, and you don't care. You don't apologize. You're not even trying to listen. You don't care. You have no rahmah, brother. Zero rahmah. Rahmah does not apply to your life. You say bismi and then you skip. That's who you are, brother. So here's your score. Yeah, but she didn't deserve it. It's irrelevant if she deserved it or not, brother, by the way. It's actually irrelevant. Because if you were worshipping her, it's relevant. You're not worshipping her, you're worshipping Allah. So there's two acid tests in life that are pretty useful acid tests to find out who you are. Your prayer and your marriage. Right? You're focused in prayer for how much? About 1% of the prayer. Okay, Habibi, that's who you are. And you can't hide it. You are a 1%er. You're not a 10%er, you're not a 20%er, not a 100%er. You're a 1. That's what you are. 1%er. Your focus on Allah is 1%. It is Allahu Akbar with your tongue, but not in reality, because you have 1% or 10% or 20% focus. That is not a real prayer. Okay, you're not praying regularly because you don't focus for at least most of the prayer. So you're not actually praying, by the way. So you don't pray, and that's who you are. So look at your prayer as a barometer. Look at your marriage. Is your marriage arguments and how you can get back at him and her? Do you raise your voice? When should you raise your voice? Never should raise your voice, particularly at your husband, because right, what did the Prophet tell us? Right, your husband is like he's like a mini Kaaba to a woman, right? Like the Prophet said, if I could tell, I think 3 Sahih hadiths about this, if I remember correctly. If I was to tell anybody to do sujood to anybody, it would be a woman to her husband. So do you shout at the Kaaba? You throw things at the Kaaba? No, right? And so This is the deen, right? So marriage is there. It's not about that person. It's about you. It's an app, right? What is my IQ? You had an IQ app. You had a reaction speed app, and you realized your reaction speed was super slow. So, oh, okay. So that's who you are, right? That's who you are. Right? Very, very simple. Your prayer and your marriage. Everything else is easy, right? Everything else is a fairly easy test. But you can't avoid the fact that when you say Allahu Akbar and pray, your thoughts are everywhere else other than Allah. And you can't avoid the fact that actually the person who lives with you and lives with you can say, hey, this is not an attack. This is who you are. One, two, three, five. You're selfish. You're moody all the time. You raise your voice all the time. You say haram things. You attack a person, right? You try and use words that hurt them, right? That's all haram. And you do that regularly. So that is who you are, right? So yeah, but it was very difficult because it's marriage. Yeah, that's the test, isn't it? If the test wasn't hard, what would be the point in the test? We can all avoid the haram when there's a pig that's rotting on Mars. It's not close to me. It's not appetizing. But avoiding pork when it tastes nice and when it looks nice, and that's when it's hard. So a test only counts when it is hard, right? So we have to think about that. This is just an app. This is just a simulation. It's not a real thing. And you're just being graded, right? And so a great thing to do is have a phone. Whenever you're having a debate with your husband or wife, put a phone next to you. I'm not going to share this, but just video yourself. And then you suddenly change because, like, oh my God, I'm being videoed. Of course you're being videoed. وَكُلَّ شَيْءٍ أَحْصَيْنَاهُ كِتَابًا. Every single thing, right? Surah Al-Kahf, every single thing is being recorded. In Surah Al-Kahf, مَا لِهَذَا الْكِتَابِ. What's wrong with this book? لَا يُغَادِرُ صَغِيرَةً وَلَا كَبِيرَةً إِلَّا أَحْصَاهَا. What's wrong with this book? This is an insane book. Every single thing, big and small, is there. And it's there in granular detail. That's the word. Ahsa is the word hasa, which are little stones. Granular details of everything you said or your feelings. And even if you don't get into arguments in your head, he said this, she said this, he did this, she said this. If you're walking around and you have grudges in your head, again, you have no akhlaq, right? It's easy. So you have no akhlaq and no love of Allah, and you're an amazing Muslim. Mubarak. And that's not in her hands or his hands or their hands or the sheikh's hands or anything else. It's not in anybody's hands. It's in your hands. Right? As the Prophet ﷺ said, Innama, that Allah will tell us in Judgment Day, Innama hiya a'malukum. These are your deeds. These are your reactions. Somebody insulted you. You reacted in that way. You processed it in that way. It's nobody else. Nobody can change the way that you react to a situation emotionally. They can't change your emotions. It's you. Right? Innama hiya a'malukum. These are just your deeds. Right? What's the verse? I can't remember. It comes after that. ثم أوفيكم إياها. I can't remember the part of the hadith. So I'm give it to you in full. فمن وجد خيرا فليحمد الله. You look at your marriage and say, MashaAllah. You look at your prayer. I'm focused in prayer. MashaAllah. Alhamdulillah. Rabbil Alameen. My marriage, yeah, there's mistakes that I've done, but Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, I'm patient. Right? When there's an argument, I'm patient. I don't raise my voice. I don't shout. I don't start attacking somebody. I don't do that. Right? I'm altruistic. Right? I'm always altruistic. I fear Allah in concerning the obligations that are upon my shoulders, right? I appreciate what the person does, right? I'm compassionate as I can be, as empathetic as I can be, as respectful as I can be, right? As understanding as I can be. فَلْيَحْمَدِ اللَّهِ, praise Allah. وَمَنْ وَجَدَ غَيْرَ ذَلِكَ, whoever finds other than that, فَلَا يَلُومَنَّ إِلَّا نَفْسَهُ. The Prophet said, don't you dare blame anybody apart from yourself. Yeah, but he ruined my life. I'm a religious person, but she makes me go crazy. I'm a religious person, but he did this to me. Right? Nobody can do anything to you. Only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you a gun and it points in one direction, which is yourself. And nobody has a finger on the trigger apart from you. Every single sin is you. Every single reaction or overreaction or underreaction is you. It's nobody else. Right? So then retain them honorably and let go of them honorably. But do not retain them only to harm them or take advantage of them. Whoever does that surely wrongs his own soul. That there it is in the Quran. You didn't wrong her by, oh, it was convenient for society. You were married to Mufti so-and-so's daughter. And so, it would be embarrassing if you divorced her. So, you just keep married to her, right? to keep up appearances, you know. So whoever does that has wronged himself. You can't wrong somebody. Nobody can wrong you. You can only wrong yourself. Right? Do not take Allah's revelations lightly. وَلَا تَتَّخِذُوا آيَاتِ اللَّهِ هُزُوًا. Don't take it as a joke. Marriage is not a joke. And remember Allah's favors upon you, as well as the book and the wisdom He has sent for you down for guidance. Be mindful of Allah and know that Allah has perfect knowledge of all things that you're saying and not saying in your to your husband or wife. Right? Right? And at this juncture, you know, many women, I don't know if they're not told that, or I don't know, they don't talk about it, but um, what does nikah mean in Arabic? It basically means one thing, right? Nikah essentially in Arabic means intercourse. So there is one right, we've spoken about this before, there is one conjugal right that all scholars agree on, right? To what extent do you have to listen to your husband? To what extent do you have to obey him? To what extent what things you have to do in the house is debated. There is one thing which comes in about, again, like 4 or 5 Sahih hadiths, which is the right to your body, right? That's like a huge thing. That's a huge thing. That is the most emotionally weighty thing, right? To give your body to a man is one of the most emotional weighty things, obviously extremely difficult when, right? But that is the one thing that you cannot say no to, right? So no, Aisha radiallahu anha, she was asked by one of the tabi'at, she's like, what if I'm upset with him? What if I'm just not in the mood? Right? It's like it's not some like, it's like, how do you can't just like, it's not something that's, it's not like paying a bill, right? I don't like the PG&E, so I pay the bill whether I like it or not. It's not like paying a bill, is it? It's something that's deeply, deeply emotional. Like, how can you just do that, right? In the process, and so she said no. So you cannot say no, right? So in that situation, it's like, okay, either you say yes, or you say no and say, listen, I'm sorry, I cannot do this. Please forgive me because this is your right. I understand it's your right, but this is extremely difficult given that this happened yesterday or last week or whatever it is. There's a whole thing that we know is happening. Like, I can't do this. Please forgive me. And then if it's a recurrent thing, it's like, please either forgive me or I need to get out of this relationship because I'm continually wronging the person I'm married to. Right? So either he's forgiving, it's like, I understand, khalas, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. That happened, this happened, whatever, it's cool. But if that person, if you know it's not going to be forgiven, then you don't want to be in a situation like that. Like, please, like, I'm not able to do that. Like, that's way, way, way too difficult emotionally. Can't do it. And I can't exit. I don't have the divorce in my hands. So what I'm asking you to do is either forgive me or let me go because this is not going to happen. I'm sorry. Like, I just can't do that. Okay, clear. So remarrying the ex-spouse, again, marriage mobility, key concept that we're trying to get across. It's okay to get married and divorced and married again. It's not a problem. It is not the end of the world, right? So when you have divorced a woman, so this is not a random scenario that came up once in the time of the Prophet ﷺ. This is in the Quran saying you might get married and then divorced and get remarried. It might happen. So when you have divorced women and they have reached the end of your waiting period, do not prevent them from remarrying their ex-husbands if they come to an honorable agreement. So here, this is a proof for and against the argument that women have autonomy when it comes to marriage. Because it says, do not prevent them from remarrying their ex-husbands. So here is Layla. Layla got divorced. Okay? She finished her iddah. She's not married to Ahmed anymore. Then Layla decided that she wanted to marry Ahmed. And Ahmed actually had reached out to her indirectly. And they said, let's get remarried. So now, does she have to go and ask her dad or her wali or guardian or not? So this verse is a proof against that because it says, do not prevent them from marrying their ex-husbands. You can't prevent it, so therefore you don't count, right? Like, you're not allowed to say no. So if you are allowed to say no, that would mean you're a guardian. So this is a proof for the Hanafis saying that you can get married without a guardian. Do not prevent them from remarrying. Like, you have nothing to do with them. Like, she's an adult, she got divorced, and she wants to get remarried. Khalas, that's it. She's getting married. And she doesn't need a guardian to come and say yes or no. Right? So that's a proof for the Hanafis. It's also proof against the Hanafis. Because Imam Shafi said this is the strongest proof against them because it says don't prevent them. Why are you telling me not to prevent them if I'm not able to prevent them. So my daughter got married young, it didn't work out, and I told her, I'm sorry, it was my fault. I didn't do enough research into the guy, or, let's wait a few years and then you get remarried. And now she wants to marry the same guy. I'm like, no, hell no. Ever, never, never, never gonna do that. Never gonna do that. Forget it. So Allah's telling, so if I can't stop her remarrying that person, then why is Allah telling me don't prevent them? If I didn't have that right to begin with, why is he even talking to me? Right? So the debate is either way, right? And as we mentioned, the majority, the majority of scholars who say a woman cannot get married without a guardian. That's true, but the majority of legal systems, of Muslim legal systems in the world, do allow that, right? You go to Jordan, Palestine, Egypt, Syria, Iraq, Pakistan. I'm not sure what it's like in Southeast Asia, but basically any kind of like country that was either under the Ottomans, Turkey. Turkey is different, but who were previously under the Ottomans or as Hanafi, they will say, yeah, a woman can get married by herself. She does not need a guardian. That is not an integral part of the contract. That's one thing. The other thing is we see mobility. They moved out of the relationship, they moved into the relationship. Not a problem. It's not shameful, right? It's not like, oh my God, you know. This is enjoined upon whoever has faith in Allah on the last day, and this is purer and more dignifying for you. Allah knows, and you do not know, right? So again, people get involved in marriage and this and that. You need to find out what the fiqh of marriage is, because what you think in your culture / values is not necessarily what Allah wants or doesn't want. So a lot of cultures, Islamic cultures are, or Muslim cultures are 80% Islamic, 20% something else. Or 50% Islamic, 50% something else. This would be appropriate. This wouldn't be appropriate. There's nothing to do with anything. Right? Nothing to do with anything. It said divorced mothers will breastfeed their offspring for 2 whole years for those who wish to complete the nursing. So here again, it says the child's father will provide reasonable maintenance and clothing for the mother during that period. No one will be charged with more than they can bear, etc. And so here, so 2 things. Is marriage an employment contract? So I got married, I'm a woman, and now I'm working 12 hours a day for this guy. Cooking, cleaning, cleaning, cooking, cooking, cleaning, cleaning, cooking, raising kids, washing kids. It's like what's 12 to 84-hour week or more, 16 hours a day, 18 hours a day. Like this is insane. So is that the nature of it? No, it's not. So when you say a woman working, right? There is what it means is, okay, on a, obviously she could be a workaholic anyway. She just wants to work in a house and do things like that anyway. Some people don't like that. But what it means in terms of the raw contract is obedience. That's what it means. So a woman is not obliged to do housework. She's obliged to be obedient to her husband. And that obedience is conditioned upon harm, conditioned upon lack of harm, right? And so he says, do this, do this, do this. Yeah, I can't do obviously all of that, right? So in the marriage itself, she's not obliged to work for her husband or work for her kids. She's obliged to be obedient. And so after the marriage, she's not interested in doing these things, right? So if she has custody of the children, then she's obviously going to have to look after the kids. But she doesn't have custody of the kids, right? So 3 months after the divorce, they have a 2-year-old, a 5-year-old, and an 8-year-old. She got remarried, and that's it. She doesn't have custody of the kids anyway. So who's looking after the kids? He is. He's looking after the kids, right? So that's a key concept of people's minds that people understand. What they do in the East is, and it's not just Muslim world, right? My mum's like Italian basically, and it's like a similar kind of world. Like the Italian kind of world is like babying men. Like men are incapable of doing anything, and they should never do anything in the house. That's not actually the case. Right? The default is that's a man's responsibility. So either he's going to do it or he's going to have somebody else to help doing that. That's fine. But there is not this eternal onus on women to work, to do manual labor, right? That's not actually a reality. That's not, you find that in Muslim cultures, but it's not actually Islamic necessarily, right? We're going over time. So we'll come back to this, inshallah. We'll talk about custody and these other things, inshallah ta'ala, next week. Okay, wa sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wasallam. Subhanallah. So please, if anybody has any questions, put them on the group. If anybody has any objections are very important, by the way, right? And it doesn't have to be. I'm not going to get angry with people who object, because if you don't agree or you don't object, that means you're not really in the class, right? So in your head, I'm expecting things that I say to either be like totally resonate or not resonate. And you'd be like, yes, or definitely no, or I'm still confused about this. So please, comment on the group, share, don't share things, but share your insights, your objections, and put something on the group, and I will share some other material as well, inshallah. Go ahead, Amjad.
I have a
Oh,
question. My friend have this question.
Is it Sister Amjad, right? I'm saying
Yes.
okay. My apologies. Yeah.
Yes, that's Amjad. This question, my friend, she wants me to ask you, please. So she said, is it permissible if she is already have her bachelor degree and she can work, but she decides to not to, but her husband works two job in order to provide things for the household. However, would that consider that she is sinning or that she is selfish in the Islam point of view?
Why would she be so why would she be sinning?
Because her husband works like two jobs in order to provide things for the house, but she decided to not work. But if she
Yeah,
does
so
work,
no,
that will
that's
help
not
him
true.
to just only have
No,
one job.
that's not true at all. So she is never obliged to work ever. She's not obliged to work at all. Even if he has cancer and he's dead, on his dead, no, she's not obliged to work.
جزاكم الله
Yeah.
خيرا.
So
Allah
so
يهنا.
so what she is obliged to do is to have compassion. So she's like, yeah, I hate the guy. Let him slave away. But that's haram. But
Yeah.
on a practical level, like most people in the world, in reality, I would say, and in the West, they cannot survive on a single income, right? But that doesn't change the rights. So what that means then is that if you want to be a kind of a shrewd woman, you should just marry wealthy men. So what would happen then is if all women were shrewd and cold, which is they're allowed to be, then they just basically all marry wealthy men, right? So like, I'm really sorry you're working and you're making, you can't pay the rent, and I could work, but I'm not obliged to do that, so I'm not going to do it. So then what would happen then, and I've spoken about this before, is, we talk about polygamy and how polygamy is unfair to women. It's actually unfair to men. Because what would happen is you come to California, like where we live here, right? I'm living in California, and your husband's making 2,000, 3,000 a month. So you're like, okay, you can't afford to pay the rent. So I'm leaving the relationship. She annuls the marriage and goes and marries the doctor who already has two wives, right? So she has a choice. She has a choice. She could either, for example, say, hey, I'm going to work so that we have more time together and invest in together. Or she can be like, oh, you have to do two jobs. Okay, that's fine. And then he might not even be able to make it with two jobs. Many people can't make it with even two jobs in the world. So if in that scenario, she's like, "Oh, I'm sorry, you're not providing for me." She is never obliged to pay for things, never obliged to start working, right? We'll talk about this, inshallah, next week, inshallah, more. But she is not obliged. Um, she's not sinful because of making her husband work. That's his thing, right? We'll talk about, inshallah. We'll talk about it next week, inshallah. Okay, wa sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi. Subhanallah wa bihamdihi, ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, astaghfiruka.